what message does it send Canadians that at a time when your party is in one of the most tumultuous times of this year, what does it say to Canadians that he has not addressed those issues in the last week at all?
Well, he hasn't addressed those issues with reporters, perhaps, but he has.
But he hasn't spoken to Canadians about it. It doesn't matter what he says to me.
Steve McKinnon has been on CTV before, and his performance has been, well, I mean, let's be honest, it's been terrible. However, this time he's made his previous appearances look stellar by comparison, as the host kept asking why Justin Trudeau has refused to address Canadians after the most disastrous week of his entire political career.
Let's take a look.
One of the ministers who does have a new job is Steve McKinnon, Minister of Employment, Workforce Development and Labour, and he joins us right now. Thanks for being here.
Good to be with you, Mike.
You said in that clip that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is one of the hardest working people that you know.
Absolutely.
Why do you think he should still be Prime Minister then?
Well, we're a team. We're a team that works very hard. We have, of course, a number of upcoming events that are capturing the government's full attention, most notably, of course, being the inauguration of a new administration in the United States. And we're going to be very squarely focused on that and responding to that, making sure Canada's ready. For my part, it'll be on workers, on jobs, and making sure our economy is properly functioning as we go through that period.
Justin Trudeau is one of the hardest working people that he knows. Well, he knows Pierre Poilievre and every single other conservative, doesn't he?
Yeah, and like, give me a break. So there's people that have been around Trudeau that have said that he doesn't even really work.
No, he thinks he's a figurehead, that the ministers should be running everything, and that he should just be putting his feet up on his desk. Right,
and we've had other, reports that after the quote-unquote workday, him and his wedding party always goes back for the, never-ending bachelor party that is at, a Rideau Cottage where he's staying, or Harrington Lake where he stays sometimes as well. So that addresses that. And this is also the same guy who says, "Oh, I don't worry about monetary policy. I let the bankers worry about monetary policy."
Like your buddy Mark Carney?
Right. But it's also interesting that McKinnon is essentially trying to justify why Justin Trudeau's still there and why he still supports him. And this is going to be interesting because if Justin Trudeau does end up resigning, all of this just it further tarnishes these ministers' careers, like even more than it already has. Because if you're sitting there telling Canadians that, oh yeah, he's going to stick around because he's awesome, and you know that he's stepping down, but you haven't said it yet, or he does end up stepping down and hasn't told you, it's not a good look. It's not a good look at all. So these guys all seem to think that they're going to be keeping their seats. I would love to see Champagne, the Chihuahua, on the other side again. I would love to see McKinnon, and I'd love to see Freeland over there too. Just, bitter because they have conservatives on that side of the house and wrapped around on the other side of the house because there's so many.
Because there's only, I would guess, maybe 180 seats on each side of the aisle. That's being a bit conservative. No pun intended.
No pun. So, and the last thing he said is, "Oh, well, we need to make sure Canada's economy is strong." Well, you better not take a vacation for Christmas then, because even Freeland and everybody else was talking about this in the Senate committee. The Canada's economy is in the tank. So you have a lot of work to do between now and January 20th to make sure that Canada's economy is running strong now, don't you?
You sure do.
Former finance minister says Canada isn't ready to confront the 25% tariffs, and she warns about where we are fiscally, saying these political gimmicks aren't what this country needs right now. Do you think it's fair that the Prime Minister has not addressed those concerns that have been so succinctly laid out by the Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister?
Well, one thing I know that Chrystia Freeland and I agree on is that Canada has, among its peer countries, including the United States. In fact, last night, you saw the United States Congress fail to pass a budget, and their deficit is already 3 times per capita what Canada's is. So fiscal situations around the world are obviously problematic as we come out of this pandemic.
But around the world, in fairness, they're not going to be facing 25% tariffs from their closest neighbor and one of their biggest trading partners.
Well, Mr. Trump has threatened
and that is
tariffs.
what Ms. Freeland has warned against. Yet somehow the Prime Minister hasn't addressed that.
Well,
So interesting to see the vast change in the media just over this last week, because you have the media like going after Jagmeet Singh like Rottweilers, you know, getting a hold of a rabbit. It was interesting to see. And it seemed to be after his interview with Breakfast Television the other day, I think it was yesterday, that all of a sudden an emergency caucus meeting for the NDP was convened, and then, you know, an about face and a letter was dropped today.
That's because that interview was a nightmare for Singh. It made him look so bad, and that's saying something.
We were going to cover that this morning, but then that happened, and we're like, okay, well, that's old news. So, you know, the fact that CTV is going after McKinnon like this, it's very interesting, because the liberal talking points that they've been using for the last year. Oh, well, you know, all the other world is doing terrible as well. So, you know, that justifies, you know, why we're doing terrible. And CBC's like, no, they're not dealing with 25% tariffs, buddy.
Well, the interesting thing to me is that in the not quite 2 years that we've been doing Northern Perspective, we have seen the mainstream media do a complete about face, where they used to be only attacking the Conservatives, and now they're going after the Liberals and the NDP now that they know the downfall is here.
And they're being pretty nice to the Conservatives by their normal standards. But I think they've kind of gotten the hint that they can't get Pierre on any gotcha questions, so they're just asking him outright on specific things, and he's giving them direct answers. That's the thing about Pierre. He's not going to attack the media just because they're the media. He's only going to defend himself if they're asking very biased or ridiculous questions.
Yeah, I mean, he likes us.
No problem with us at all. So but it is fascinating to see this, and the fact that you know, Mike says to Steve McKinnon, well, Trudeau hasn't done anything. he hasn't done anything, and Chrystia Freeland warned him about it, and then, you know, McKinnon's like, oh crap.
We will be addressing that, and we'll be addressing, obviously we want to stop it. If Canada will be deploying every effort possible to engage with our American friends and to understand their priorities, to match them with ours, and make sure that Canada can be spared from this policy, which will harm Canadians, obviously, but will harm Americans far more. So, Mike, I mean, let's not kid ourselves. Tariffs are a bad idea. They're a bad idea for the United States. They're a bad idea for Canada. If they should happen, and we very much hope that they don't, we will be deploying every effort possible to make sure that they don't. But we will respond, and we will respond in kind, and we will make sure that we protect Canadians in the process.
But what message does it send Canadians that at a time when your party is in one of the most tumultuous times of this year, if not the Prime Minister's leadership of the party since 2015, what does it say to Canadians that he has not addressed those issues in the last week at all?
Well, he hasn't addressed those issues with reporters, perhaps, but he has.
But he hasn't spoken to Canadians about it. It doesn't matter what he says to me. It matters what he says to people at home.
You know what? That's a really good point. The media is the kind of like the throughway for the average Canadian to learn about what's happening in our parliament.
They're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And Mike's, it's funny because this isn't being like acting. Like, this isn't acting. This isn't being put on as a play. Mike is generally incredulous at the answers here. Like, what does it say that the Prime Minister hasn't said anything? Oh, well, he hasn't said anything to reporters. Mike, he doesn't have to say anything to me. Why does he have to say anything to me?
Canadians, why haven't you gotten in front of a podium if you don't want to talk to the reporters? Why haven't you set up a press conference? Why haven't you set up a scrum? Why haven't you gone on CTV or Global News or talked to the National Post? Like,
well, he doesn't have to do any of that, right? He just has to get in front of a microphone.
Right.
Like,
that's why I said, why haven't you set up a podium?
And then Steve's like, well, he's talked to cabinet.
Great. And yes, we do see some of the cabinet ministers like McKinnon speaking to the media, but what does it say about our Prime Minister that he's avoiding all of us right now?
But what kind of a terrible answer is that? Well, he may not have talked to Canadians, but he's talked to, his Liberal cabinet, the people that he talks to every day, but he's talked to us. So that's fine, right? Like, what kind of an answer is that?
Ridiculous.
He has addressed all of us in the government, and we are very, very squarely focused on the challenge that's coming. The Prime Minister has been very engaged on this issue, as have ministers. We work together very, very well. Mr. LeBlanc, Madame Joly, and others who are engaging squarely with Americans. A number of other ministers like myself who've been squarely focused on the impacts, the potential impacts in Canada, and making sure that those are mitigated.
But you now have a population that's going into a holiday season that has not heard from the Prime Minister specifically on what is going on right now. We are facing the potential of a recession in this country because every premier has said 25% tariffs from the Americans will surely mean a recession in their province. However, Canadians are now going to be sitting around dinner tables talking about this type of thing. And they have not heard one word from the Prime Minister to reassure them that we are on track to avoid those. You're the Minister of Employment now. Jobs will be affected here. Mm-hmm. Why are we not hearing from the person who is leading this country to reassure Canadians that there is work being done and that this may be avoided? Because right now there's a vacuum and he's not filling it.
Well, Mike, I would say there is a vacuum, and his name is Justin Trudeau, because he is sucking right now. Like, he is just completely sucking doing his job as the Prime Minister, or rather not doing his job as the Prime Minister.
Well, and not only is he not speaking with Canadians, not speaking with reporters since this whole thing with Freeland on Monday, since this cabinet shuffle on Friday, he's canceled his year-end appointments with who was it, Mercedes Stevens?
All the news agencies.
Yeah.
All the news agencies. So he usually does one with Global. He usually does one with CTV. He does one with CBC. Like, they're all canceled. Like, and like, we were kind of looking forward to these as kind of dumpster fire content for everybody in January, but now, like, they're all gone.
Yeah, if you do want to see one from last year, it's on our most popular page. It's the one with Mercedes Stevens, and that one is a barn burner if you haven't checked that out yet.
Right. If you've seen our short where, there's a lady that says, "Nobody likes you," that's the interview that it's from.
So I could only imagine what it would be like this year. I'm so sad we've been robbed of that.
So, well, we'll probably do a post on our community page just because it's kind of like a flashback. And you'll get to see how bad it was last year for Justin Trudeau.
But good for Canadians.
So, but you see McKinnon as he's kind of being grilled there, and he's just like, okay, what do I say? What do I say? What do I say? Because everything that Mike is saying completely makes sense. Like, yeah, you are essentially leaving Canadians going into their holidays, sitting around their families where they're going to be talking about this dumpster fire that happened this week, because the political people, the people that are really interested in politics now, yeah, they all saw it, but people that are not interested in politics, they've been kind of drawn into this as well because of how significant it was. They are going to be talking about this. And there's nothing positive to talk about the Liberal government.
Right. And the Liberal government is not getting ahead of this. Like, Canadians are going to be gathered in groups talking to each other because That's what we do around the holidays. And instead of trying to push out some positive message right now, the Prime Minister is hiding. Canadians are going to be talking about that.
Well, and even Jagmeet's like statement that he dropped today, this was almost like the fall economic statement 2.0, because he essentially like dropped it off and then walked away. Like, that's a massive U-turn from his non-rhetoric that he's been using essentially for the past 2 years.
All options are on the table. All options are on the table.
That's not an answer.
All options. Everything's on the table. All options are 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 on the table.
He's finally said something substantive and something concrete that everybody's been asking about, but he wouldn't put himself in front of reporters to be called on it.
Right. Pierre Poilievre is the only one going in front of reporters to talk about this stuff. You know, like an actual leader would.
Right. And what do we always say?
Be first.
Be first.
I fully expect that you will. More generally, I fully expect that the government will be active on a number of fronts. You've heard from ministers all week long. You've heard from others who are going to
But isn't it incumbent on the Prime Minister to
You've
speak?
heard from the U.S. administration. I think the best evidence of our engagement with the U.S. administration was on this very show, where the new borders of the United States came on and said that he has had very fulsome, positive, engaging conversations with Canadian authorities, including my colleague Dominic LeBlanc, and has come away from those feeling very reassured about the Canadian border and about, and I heard him make, in fact, some commitments where he thought that the U.S. border situation could be shored up to better protect Canadians. So I think we're making very, very good headway.
So you're going to leave it to the Americans to reassure Canadians that things are going to be okay?
No, that's...
Oh man, what a dumpster fire this is.
Clearly, there's more than one vacuum in Trudeau's government. Steve McKinnon is probably a Dyson vacuum, because he's sucking big time in this interview.
This is brutal.
Like, and good retort by Mike. So you're going to leave it up to the Americans to reassure Canadians.
But you know what? This is very indicative of how this Liberal government is structured, if you ask me. It's that Trudeau is the only guy who really handles the media, and then everybody else, when he's gone, doesn't know what to do. They have no idea, because they're so weak. Like, his cabinet is so weak. We're going to be talking about some of the people that he added to his cabinet, and you just look at the cabinet and you're like, if we had to pick one of these people, we'll include Freeland back in there, just because, like, if you had to pick one of these people, I don't know who would succeed him as Prime Minister, because they are all weak and terrible at what they do, quite frankly.
Right.
If they weren't terrible at what they did, then this country wouldn't have a $62 billion deficit this year.
Well, and this has been the story with Trudeau and being the quote-unquote leader of Canada. There's one big problem with Justin Trudeau, is that he actually displays an immense lack of leadership. That's the problem. Look at what happened in the pandemic.
Yep.
He ran away. Like, he just left. And everyone was like, all right. And what happened? The premiers had to just go and do what they did. And his excuse was, oh, well, you know, it's a provincial thing.
It's a provincial thing. Healthcare is provincial, blah, blah,
and it's
blah.
like, what? Like,
he was the worst prime minister that we could have had to lead us through a major event such as a pandemic or a war.
right, because this is a guy that says, oh, well, I'm just a figurehead. I don't really do anything. Unless someone crosses me, then I will do something. And he just leaves it to everybody else to do. And he just collects his paycheck, you know, goes to fancy dinners, takes his flight. You know, this was his dream job, because according to him, he didn't have to do anything. Meanwhile, you had someone like Stephen Harper, and, you know, you can think what you want of him, but he would take his work home with him and read all of his briefings at home after dinner. Like, he never stopped working, because if you want the big job and sit in the big chair, you got to do all the work that goes with it. Like, and not everybody can do it.
Right. And that's what we've heard about Pierre as well, is that he's constantly working. He's going to rallies and meeting Canadians, and he's doing canvassing. Like, we got to meet him at a canvassing event this past August, and he's just always working. He's always on the go.
And this is the hard thing about the Prime Minister. Not only do they have to worry about their own writing, they have to worry about the rest of the country as well.
Right.
So, but you have McKinnon, like, he's drowning.
Not what I said, Mike. What I said
No,
was
I know, but you said what
I said
that
was
he
that
said
was,
on this program,
that,
which you rightly said, you know, a fantastic job by our team here to get that interview and to put that on TV. But we are not hearing from your government to reassure Canadians about these tariffs.
You've heard from Mr. LeBlanc and others on these issues.
The Prime Minister. I mean, I can't underscore how important that would be, I think, to Canadians to hear from him at this moment. Yet instead, he goes in front of cameras and wishes people a happy holidays and saying, we had a great cabinet meeting, instead of addressing the turmoil that is going on inside his own party. We just had Rob Oliphant, the parliamentary secretary, say, you know what, it's time. And there's a growing number here, but he has not addressed this. Why?
You know what, we're a team.
The parliamentary secretary said that?
One of them, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, one of them.
They're supposed to be like the most partisan, the most for the party, and he's saying Trudeau needs to step down.
Well, that's the thing. I think he is being partisan and for the party and saying Trudeau needs to step down.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But here's the thing. No sympathy for Mr. Rob Oliphant, because you voted for every single thing that's here. So did the rest of you Liberals. But now that you see what a disaster this is turning out to be, and you're like, well, you know, Trudeau's the guy. He decided everything, and, you know, it wasn't me, it was him. Sorry, that's not going to be how this is going to go.
A thought just popped into my head that the Liberals are only doing anything about this now because it's just become a disaster for them now.
Yep.
This has become a disaster for Canadians. It's been like this for many, many years. We've been suffering through this for many, many years. And the Liberals only woke up this past week.
Well, I don't know if they woke up, but it blew up. That's the problem.
Right. I think if it wasn't affecting them, if their seats were not in jeopardy, if the Liberals were going to get a majority, for example, in the next election, I don't think they would care. And that's a problem. It means that the politicians are not listening to their constituents. They're ignoring the emails that we send them, and they're just saying, oh, it can't be that bad.
Well, the irony in that is if they were going to get a majority, then they would be actually acting on the will of their constituents, because their constituents would put them in power again. So,
but you know what I mean? If their seats were safe, they would not be this concerned.
Well, and this is the thing, right? And the fact that they've been ignoring Canadians for more than 2 years, because they've been seeing the polls for more than 2 years. This isn't a surprise, right?
No.
To Tanya's point, this shouldn't have been a surprise to the Liberals. They've seen the polls, but what have they done? Literally nothing. They've done literally nothing other than, I know, let's hand out some more money. And
right, and they kept voting to increase the carbon tax. You know, they are now after people's guns, like law-abiding citizens, like licensed gun owners. They're trying to take their property. Just, I don't even know what else to say. This is just absurd to me.
Well, and everyone's going to be shocked to hear this on the GST HST tax. So the CTV went and spoke to some restaurant owners to see if it's actually made a difference, and everyone's going to be shocked to know that it's made zero difference on people visiting restaurants.
Well,
because
no one can afford to.
Right? Like, I don't understand why people are surprised to see that Canadians are not going to restaurants to not spend money that they don't have, because it's all been taken by the Liberal government.
Right.
Team, Mike, and we've been working with the Prime Minister all week long on the very issues that you talk about. We put out a fall economic statement that contained some very, very positive measures for Canadians. We will continue to do that, and Canadians should feel very, very reassured that the government will be working right through the inauguration of the new U.S. administration on that particular priority, but on all of the other priorities facing Canadians. The economy, jobs. I have a new job today, and that is to make sure that our economy functions well for workers, that we have an economy that works for everyone, and make sure that jobs continue to be foursquare at the front of the priority list for the government.
Let me ask you this. What conversations have you had with the Prime Minister about his future and where this party should go and what he should be doing and what his position should be in it?
Well, my conversations with the Prime Minister are, of course, confidential, as are everyone's. But, you know, the Prime Minister has said that he will be reflecting. I suspect that that's going on. I don't know that I can characterize it better than that. I will.
So this is Mike's point, right? This is the point he's been trying to make this whole time. These are the answers that Canadians want from the Prime Minister, because everything blew up. A nuclear bomb went off in his caucus, and Canadians are like, okay, so what's next? What the heck? Like, is Trudeau even going to be here when Trump is around? Or are we going to have an election? Is he going to prorogue? Like, what's going to happen?
Yeah, it's concerning to me if they decide to prorogue while the U.S. government is inaugurated, and then they slap some tariffs on us and there's nothing we can do about it because we don't have a government because it's been prorogued.
Pretty much, right? And that's the concern. So Mike's like, you know, the Prime Minister needs to come out and talk to people. And, oh, well, you know, Mr. LeBlanc's coming out here, okay? And I've come out here and tariffs are bad. Tariffs are bad, okay? So, like, this is what you see. And then Mike's like, so what conversations have you had with, well, those are private, okay? Like, Mike, Steve.
You know, to Steve's credit, it is private. What happens in caucus stays in caucus. It's like Fight Club, right? You don't talk about it. But like, Canadians need to know these answers. So if you're not permitted to talk about it, then the Prime Minister needs to be in front of a microphone.
And to Tanya's point, how weak of a person and how weak of a team do you have to be to essentially agree to cover for your boss when he doesn't want to come out and take accountability? Like, that's just like,
it's slimy.
It's
gross.
Yeah.
I will leave it to him and others to characterize his process of reflection. I'm sure that will happen with his family over the holidays, that he will be doing that. I have no doubt about that. We have gone through, let's agree, a turbulent week in Ottawa, in this bubble that we live in, you and I, Mike, but what we will...
In fairness, I think it's punctured the bubble, and the Canadians have felt it as well. But go ahead, sorry.
Yes, and the fact is that what I think you've also seen is a refreshed, rejuvenated team full of energy, but also competence and experience emerge at the end of this week.
Would you say the cabinet that we have put forward has experience? Because it seems like a lot of these are first-timers and people that we're going to have a quick learn. And even Nate Erskine-Smith said he's not sure how long his runway is here.
Oops. There's a landmine that Steve stepped on. Like,
whoops.
Oh, everyone should be nice and comforted because we have an experienced cabinet here. What? You just shuffled a bunch of people in that have never been ministers before, so they don't know what it means to run a ministry.
Right, and they're not going to know for that long, I suspect.
And like, okay, so what are they supposed to do here? So if Trudeau was only interested, we know he's not, but we know if he was only interested in being as ready as possible for Trump, what he should have done is, if he was going to do a cabinet shuffle, he should have looked back at all of the ministers that he had in all of the positions, and he should have sat down and said, okay, who was best in these particular positions? And that's what he should have shuffled, because then he would have at least ended up with his best performing, not that they were great, but his best performing team in order to put him in the strongest position in order to actually approach Trump. That's what he should have done, which means you're most experienced, you're most competent, even if that's 20 out of 100.
I was going to say it's slim pickings.
It's at least your most competent. So you have your A team, which in every other government is probably the E team. Let's just, be honest here, but you'd at least have your A team. But he didn't do that. what he did is he looked at who was the loudest clapping seals over the last couple of weeks, and he said, okay, all of you get to be ministers.
I think he was pandering. Again, I think he picked Erskine Smith because he had done some work previously on housing, and he was pretty popular in the Ontario elections. So I think that's why he was chosen. We're going to get into the cabinet shuffle as well as our opinions on all that in a different video. But just from a cursory glance, I think he did it for popularity, to try to preserve as many votes as possible. I think the Liberal strategy from here on out is going to be to stop bleeding votes, not necessarily to win any back.
Well, and if they're going to do that, they can't have people like Steve McKinnon stepping on landmines saying, we have a very lots of experience in the cabinet. What?
Well, you have a number of very experienced, of course, cabinet ministers, and many of whom did not change jobs today that you didn't see. You saw a bunch of newcomers. I think that's obviously very welcome new energy to the cabinet group. And I have gained some responsibilities. I intend to deploy all my best efforts and talents and experience to the Canadian economy and to Canadian workers.
Last question for you. You admitted that this has been a difficult week. What do you think it has done to the Liberal Party and its standing in Canadians' minds?
Here's what I would say to that. The Liberal Party is one of the most resilient political organizations in this country, perhaps in the Western world. It's responsible for some of the most major advances that we've made as a society. It's always been the meeting place between right and left in this country where we can broker solutions. Canadians have been well served by the Liberal Party of Canada. And every time I've seen someone underestimate the Liberal Party of Canada, they regret doing so. So I have great faith in this institution, not because it is entitled to anything. It has to earn, just like other parties must, the trust of Canadians every day. I wake up every day with a resolve to earn the trust of my constituents and, by extension, all Canadians. But never underestimate the Liberal Party. The Liberal Party is composed of many diverse people from all over this amazing country, and we will continue to be the place, I think, where Canadians find solutions to the problems.
You don't think it's been damaged at all this week?
What did he say? Canadians have been well served by the Liberal Party? Was that it? Is he joking? We have more Canadians in poverty now than we have in a very, very long time.
Probably ever.
Maybe the Great Depression in the 1920s.
Well, numbers, I think ever. Ratio, yeah, probably. Probably the
percentage.
Yeah. But Steve.
Like, does he not understand how he sounds?
Either that or this is one of the Liberal talking points that he's just repeating. But this is the funny thing about the Liberals is that they don't seem to understand that this type of answer is what loses them trust every single day.
Yeah, because clearly every bad thing that has happened to this country and to Canadians, the Liberals think it's fine. They did a good job.
And like, here's the thing. Advice to Conservative politicians when you guys are in tough, and there will be a situation at some point where you are. You need to accept the reality and need to say, you know what? We've made some decisions that didn't work out well for Canadians. We own that. We will try to fix that. And I'm not going to tell you that everything is rosy for Canadians. Like, and then don't go on to say, but we've done this and this and this and this, because you've just completely invalidated all the accountability you attempted to take with that answer.
No, tell us how you're going to fix it.
Right.
What are you going to do to make this better?
And the best thing you could say is, we're going to reverse that policy.
Well, and the other thing, the numbers don't lie. I mean, we look at the statistic, and the official statistics will not be released until 2026. But news outlets such as CTV had been reporting that the percentage of Canadians currently living in poverty is 25%. And you look at the stats, when Stephen Harper left office, I think it was something like 14%, maybe 16%, which is still a high number, don't get me wrong. But it's not 25%. So quite clearly, whatever the Liberals have been doing has not worked.
Of course it's been damaged. Anytime you lose a finance minister, of course. That's going to get people's attention, Mike. And of course we regret the departure of Madam Freeland. She's a valued colleague. I'm glad she's staying in our caucus. But we are a resilient political organization. We've delivered results for Canadians. We got them successfully through a pandemic. We've had a lot of turbulence around the world. You saw a government fall in Germany this week. You see continuing political turmoil in the UK and France. Obviously, in the U.S., they made 2 attempts to get a budget through at the deadline in the U.S. Congress this week, Mike.
You know what's interesting about just about all those governments that he's citing? They're left-leaning. The most unstable governments are left-leaning. You have Kamala Harris and Joe Biden down in the States. That's going away. You have France. You have UK. Like, the West has had enough of far left agenda.
We have.
And you heard Steve McKinnon say, well, you know, the Liberals are the party where, you know, left meets right. No.
Not anymore. You guys maybe were the left meets right party like 20 years ago, but you're definitely not now.
And if you were, Anthony Housefather wouldn't be saying we need to bring the Liberal Party back towards the center.
I think this is a precipice for the Liberal Party. We can go into the next election with a different vision, a more centrist vision, in my view, a hopeful vision, and one with a different leader who conveys a different message. Or we can go into a very soon election with Justin Trudeau, and I don't think that's in the best interest of anybody.
And he's not the first Liberal member of Parliament to say that. And that's why you've lost all your voters. So you are past the NDP with all of your agenda. Look at what the Liberal Party of New Brunswick just did. Their first act after getting elected, they reverted the change made by Blaine Higgs, where it required parental permission and them to be informed when their kids change their names at school due to gender ideology. That was their first act.
You know, as a parent, that's really upsetting because I would want to know what's going on in my child's life at school. I mean, we get frustrated enough with our son's school and his teachers and the fact that they don't keep us in the loop on when he's being visited by various clinicians at the school. They don't communicate these things to us that we feel would be important for his development. So for teachers to hide something like that, something so significant as a name change or even a pronoun change from the parents, that's robbing the parents of the ability to ask the child, is everything okay? Is everything okay at school? Do you want to talk about why you feel this way, etc., etc.? No, the left thinks that we're all monsters who want to harm our children.
Well, and let's just go one thing straight. Teachers are not psychologists.
No.
They're not mental health specialists. They aren't qualified to be making those determinations and those decisions. That's up to the parent and their child. So,
and nobody loves your kid the way that you do.
Right. So, you know, this is the Liberal brand across Canada, folks. Far left.
And failed to do so.
But in fairness, just looking ahead to 2025,
we live in. But my point is, we live in extremely unpredictable times.
Since you bring it up, you've also had the NDP say today that the Jagmeet Singh saying at the first available opportunity, they're bringing you down.
Well, the first available opportunity they had was about a week ago on about 10 different
next
occasions.
Available then, the next available. So
where they voted confidence in this government approximately 6, 8, 10 times. So, you know, last week they voted confidence in the government, surely to heavens, so we would have a government
so do you
through
think
the inauguration of this U.S. administration.
Do you think Jagmeet Singh's bluffing?
I have no idea what the New Democrats are up to. They'll have to obviously come on here and explain themselves, Mike, but the New Democrats just finished voting confidence in this government and in its ability to meet the challenge and meet the moment.
But they're saying that's done. They're saying that you can no longer count on them.
Well, what I would say back is what has changed.
Well, they had voted in the past. He's saying that he's going to vote at the soonest available opportunity in the new year to bring you down. That's what's changed.
So I would say to Mr. Singh, through you, what has changed in the last 6 days that has required all of a sudden us to change course, to not have a functioning government through the U.S. inauguration, not meet this challenge of the threat of tariffs and the economic consequences of that moment. Mr. Singh, I think, has been a little inconsistent on all of these things, and I think he probably owes it to Canadians to come on here and explain those choices, because...
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay. Let's just unpack this a bit. It's probably some of the first statements he's made that we both agree with. Isn't it interesting what happens after he gets off of Liberal talking points and actually, gives an honest answer? But then at the end, he says, well, I think he owes it to Canadians to come on here and explain his answers. Time out. You were asked at the beginning of this, where's the Prime Minister? Like, if you think the third level down leader of an opposition party owes it to Canadians to come on and talk about a letter, you don't think that the Prime Minister of Canada, who's been hiding behind somebody's skirt for the last week, doesn't owe it to Canadians to come out and talk to them? Are you serious, Steve? Are you serious? Like, clown show.
We're not playing tiddlywinks here. This is an important moment for Canada. This is an important moment for progressives in this country. We've achieved major things: dental care, child care in this country. These are things that we've done, yes, in partnership in some cases with the New Democratic Party. We've made a lot of headway. We've given a lot of things to a lot of people that have made their lives easier. And Mr. Singh, I guess, wants to put all that on the table right now at this very, very tricky moment for the country and for the world. I would question that choice.
Before I leave it there, you have invited Mr. Singh on this program through us. Through you, I'll invite your leader on this program to speak to Canadians as well. We're available anytime the Prime Minister wants to join us.
Oh, shot down. That was a beautiful recovery.
Right? Like, yeah, you want Jagmeet to come on? How about the Prime Minister come on? But this is where we are, folks. This is where we are. So now the Liberals and the NDP are going to be like smacking each other from here until the election, whenever that happens.
Hopefully sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens. But this is the thing. Again, how can they respect somebody that refuses to come out and talk to the media and who just says, no, that's not my job, that's your job. That's why you're a minister. Are you kidding me? Who's too cowardly to come and talk to, all the different year-end report? Like,
that, I think, was the most shocking to me, especially because I was looking forward to the interview with Ms. Stevenson.
Yeah, I was looking forward to him getting wrecked by everybody.
Oh, yeah, I think everybody was, and I think that's why he called them off.
So, but this is the interesting thing, folks. And I wonder what Jagmeet's going to do, because he has some year-enders to do too. Is he going to now hide? Is that the thing with everybody on the left? Like they hand in their homework and then they go run home and hide from everybody? That's fine. You've been hiding from Canadians for the last couple of years, and the only one who's been out and had the guts to talk to them is Pierre Poilievre. Is there any reason why he is double your numbers in the polls? Is there any reason?
Maybe because he's an actual leader.
Well, and this is the thing. And they wonder why the premiers are all doing their things. There is a vacuum of leadership in this country. And Pierre Poilievre, he's saying, I'm here, I'm ready. Let's go.